Hello, welcome to this overview of understanding corporate governance. This is a new product package being presented by ESS Small Business, part of the ESS BIZTOOLS group. The Corporate Governance Network is going to cover a wide range of matters of particular interest to company directors and officers, as well as committee members and officers of not-for-profits and charities, to help you understand a range of matters relative to the operations of businesses, whether they are companies or not-for-profits or charities. One of the first things that we suggest that you should be doing for your business or your organisation is developing an elevator pitch. First of all, you would introduce yourself to someone and briefly summarise your company or organisation's business, identify your position in the organisation, and you've got 30 seconds to do this to give an overview of your business and what you do within that business. The key components of an elevator pitch are to identify your business's products and categories, describe the problems you are going to solve, focus on your proposed solution, and state the key benefits. What's in it for me from a listener's point of view? One of the key things that we will be identifying in the various webinars that we're going to be presenting, 6 in total, 90 minutes each, is that directors and committee members need to be aware of what's going on around you, aware of the law, and aware of legal decisions. There's a need to understand the Corporations Act, Crowdsource Funding Act, Taxation Act. And for small businesses, there's also obviously the necessity to understand the definition of small business under the Taxation Act, how PAYG tax deductions work, and the new early stage innovation company also comes under the Australian Taxation Act because it's an amendment to the Taxation Act that is allowing early stage innovation companies to raise capital. Court decisions create law. Therefore, company directors and officers in charities and not-for-profits need to be keeping an eye on what's happening in court decisions. And in the webinars that we're going to present over the next 12 months, we'll be commenting on major court decisions that are affecting how company directors relate in your business. Another very important area is your people management, which these days flows into Fair Work Australia. Fair Work Australia are the federal government agencies that are responsible for the administration of all matters to do with awards and work conditions, and therefore their deliberations, their decisions, their rulings are very important, and directors and committee members should be aware of them. Another very important activity that we will be commenting on in the various webinars is workplace health and safety. This relates to whether you have appointed appropriate committees as summarised on the screen, and people, and whether you do have emergency exits and evacuation plans in place. Environmental laws are very important these days. They might not have been as prominent 30 years ago, but they are now very prominent, and company directors and committee members of charities and organisations need to be aware of them. State and territory government laws also affect the life of directors and committee members. You need to be aware of the ones that apply in your situation. These days, directors also need to be very mindful of social media, and we'll be commenting on social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. in the various webinars that we're going to present. Digital media is another activity that organisations need to have an understanding of. Whether you wish to use it or not is another matter, but it's a good idea to understand how it works And media relationships are very important for directors to have an understanding of. And organisations should have already determined policies on the issuing of news releases to the media, articles to social media, so that these activities can occur from time to time when the responsible person might not be obtainable for some reason. We will talk about corporate and organisation structures so that you have a good working knowledge of how board of directors operates, how board of directors acting as a trustee operate, how a board of advice operates. We will be looking at appointment of directors and committee members. As part of this, we will be highlighting the very high importance that you should be placing on the company's constitution or your organisation's constitution and making sure that it is abided by. How the organisation replaces a director or a committee member should also be clearly understood by the directors. We'll be commenting on new directors and committee members undertaking due diligence before accepting appointment to a committee or a board of directors, because it's very important that you have a clear understanding of what you're getting yourself involved in. Once you've accepted appointment to a board of directors, you are then one of the directors, and you are potentially personally liable for matters that may have occurred prior to your appointment. So you need to undertake fairly stringent due diligence review on the board or the committee that you're going to become a member of. We will also be discussing over the 6 workshops the responsibilities of directors and committee members. And we'll be looking at the liabilities of directors and committee members for a range of matters, as you can see on the screen there at present: insolvent trading, taxation office payments, workplace health and safety. And one of the very important activities that directors and committee members should be aware of is the declaration of interests. And we'll be discussing that in some detail in the various workshops. One of the most important decisions that a board of directors make or a committee makes is the appointment of the managing director or the chief executive officer or the general manager, whatever you wish to call that person. And we will be discussing various aspects relative to this decision. We will also be talking to you about the role of the company secretary or the committee secretary. We will be discussing directors and committee members' personal responsibilities. Keep yourself informed. Read reports before the meeting and go to the meeting with some questions noted down so that you are asking questions, and especially asking questions if you don't understand something. Remember, you are liable for some matters if they are incorrect. If you are unsure of something, our recommendation will be that you should be requesting a legal or expert opinion. Very important that all business people allocate themselves some quality time each week to think about the organisation, to plan where you're going, not working on the tools all the time. Directors should be conscious of what's happening within the team. And even though the CEO or the general manager is the person responsible for the team, directors should be aware of who the team members are and what is happening within the organisation. We believe that the function of a board of directors or a committee will be enhanced if there has been a deliberate allocation of portfolios. And these are some of them that are on the screen at present. Who is the responsible person or the champion for these particular items like research and development, intellectual property, development and protection, the products that your organisation produces, the supplies that you receive from suppliers, human resources, manufacturing, etc. And there's a whole range of these, which over the period of the 6 webinars we'll be commenting on many of these items and suggesting that you should have appointed people who are responsible for them. Not all left as the responsibility of the managing director or the CEO. We will be commenting on risks that relate to companies and organisations. Some of them are listed on the screen, but there are many others, and we'll be discussing those during the time that we are communicating with you. Communication, very important in businesses these days. Government relations, industry associations, who's the person that's responsible for these? Capital raising, if that's what you want to do. Are you going to use Section 708 of the Companies Act, or an early stage innovation company, or crowdsource funding? Risk management issues. We discussed some of these a little earlier when we talked about allocation of portfolio responsibilities. There's some of the items under the risk management category that we will be referring to over the various webinars. Intellectual property protection is a very important part of the director's role or the committee member's role. Intellectual property can be a very valuable asset for an organisation, but there needs to be a policy put in place to ensure that intellectual property firstly is identified. Secondly, that research and development activities that are taking place within the business are properly documented. That if appropriate, patents are applied for, confidentiality agreements, and we'll be talking about those various issues and having an expert talk to you in a couple of the webinar sessions about the protection of intellectual property in your organisations. I think it's very important that directors and committee members understand financial accounts. During these webinars, we will be working through the various components of financial accounts. But some of you may find that you need to undertake some additional study on understanding financial accounts. And in the first webinar, I will give you some details of some additional training that we are going to offer relative to understanding financial accounts that you might be interested in participating in. We'll be looking at benchmarking and showing you how that applies and giving you some examples of benchmarking reports for a number of different types of businesses. Understanding financial accounts, monitoring the financial performance is a very important part of the director's role. What's happening in your market? Where is your market for your business? Is it local? Is it Australia? Is it international? Does your organisation have a market plan? Are you able to differentiate your organisation? Do the directors understand the unique competitive advantage of your organisation? Customers. Again, one of the high priorities for a director or a committee member. Who are your customers? Do you understand their needs? What do they buy from you? What other services could you provide to them? Why don't they buy some of the products you've got? Do they know that you've got them? Is the company's management team clearly articulating your organisation's value proposition? Capability statements. Does your organisation have one? Is it up to date? Does it clearly identify what your organisation does? Is it available to be sent to a potential new customer? Is it able to be submitted as part of a tender for a new contract? Are extracts of it provided on your website? Have you taken advantage, if you're a company, of listing on the Industry Capability Network? This is a free network. You can pay to get a higher priority viewing of your advertisement, but it's available for every business in Australia and New Zealand to be listed, whereby you can promote what your business can do. We will be discussing in some detail what happens or what should happen at board and committee meetings or board of advice meetings. And we'll be looking at how the chair can conduct a directors or committee members assessment. It's a very important aspect of corporate governance that directors or committee members shouldn't take the view that you have been appointed for life. It's very important that boards and committees are refreshed every so often, with new people being appointed to the board or to the committee. And it's part of the chair's responsibility to ensure that a discussion has been held with the directors and committee members on their performance. Networks. What type of networks is your organisation involved in? Are these just a social event, or are you getting some real value from your organisation's participation in the networks? What else could be achieved from your involvement in a network? Quality time we've talked about before. Is your organisation aware of the grants that are available? There is a whole raft of grants for businesses that are available, and there are many grants available for not-for-profits and charity organisations. Is someone in your organisation monitoring grants? Capital raising is very important for companies, and we're going to look at this. Today, there is more opportunities for small, medium-sized businesses to raise capital than what there has ever been in Australia. In some respects, Australia has finally caught up with the other major Western countries in the world. So we now have early-stage innovation company, which is targeted at businesses that have developed a new product, process, or service. Crowdsourced funding companies, which is available for companies with turnovers under 25 million and gross value of assets under $25 million, not listed on a stock exchange, can raise up to $5 million in a 12-month period. Corporations Act, Section 708, has been around for about 30 years and enables a proprietary limited company to be able to raise up to $2 million from no more than 20 investors every 12 months, so long as the number of shareholders does not exceed 50, because that is the maximum for proprietary limited companies. So we'll have a look at the investment readiness journey, because most companies will not be able to raise capital unless there has been a journey. It starts normally with research and development, the documentation of it, the protection of it. You may have gone into the accelerating commercialisation grant, which could have resulted in a grant of up to $1 million from the federal government on a $50 funding basis. You may then have moved into early stage innovation company due diligence, because an early stage innovation company is a very attractive organisation for investors, and crowdsourced funding opportunities are also available as a crowdsourced funding company. And we're going to look at all that. And part of the documentation that will be required for those organisations is their market review, market forecast, the marketing plan, and then the other documents that are on the screen: budgets, cash flow forecast, business plan, information memorandum, and the investment pitch. Directors need to be aware of every segment of this journey. The other areas that we think you should be aware of, and we will be discussing, is the Privacy Act. There's been some amendments to the Privacy Act that commenced during 2018. There's also been some announcements by the federal government on the temporary skills shortage. This is for overseas people being issued visas to come to Australia. If they have skills that the government has decided there's a shortage of those people in Australia, there are some fairly significant changes to occur during 2018, and we will be discussing those. We will be encouraging you in each of the webinar workshops to develop your action plan. After each workshop, we will send you a summary of what was discussed in that webinar, with some suggested items that you should consider in the development of your organisation's action plan. And in some cases, it might be your personal action plan as a director or a committee member of an organisation. We will talk to you about leadership, and we'll have a leadership expert talk to you in some of the workshops, webinars. We will also have an expert talk to you about debtors management and how improving your debtors days outstanding can contribute to significant improvements in your cash flow management. Each webinar we will have a tax update targeted at the small, medium enterprise market and charities and not-for-profits, so that you're aware of any of the latest court decisions or announcements from the Taxation Commissioner. We will also have a marketing expert who will participate in some of the webinars to give you some tips on improving your marketing strategy within your business, whether it's social media, traditional marketing, digital marketing. We will have some comments on it. It's very difficult to run a business unless someone is doing the selling, or you have a process to undertake the selling within your organisation. And we will have a sales consultant talking to you a number of times during the webinars about development of sales philosophies for your organisation, whether it's a company, a charity, or a not-for-profit. Most businesses run out of money pretty quick if they're not making sales. For each webinar, you're going to receive some material. 72 hours beforehand, we will send you the agenda for the forthcoming workshop, webinar, together with the PowerPoint slides for that webinar. So you'll have them first, you can glance through them, maybe make some notes. We'll be encouraging you to send through questions to us prior to the webinar so that we can make sure we're going to analyse the questions, do whatever research is required, if any is required, and then be able to talk in the webinar in response to your questions. After the webinar, we will send you any of the notes that have been used by the various presenters so that you have them in your file. We will be sending the notes that I referred to earlier about the development of an action plan for you and your organisation based on the matters that have been discussed in this particular workshop webinar. And we will send you the link on YouTube for the recording of the webinar so that if you want to sit down and replay something later on, you can. Or if you miss the webinar because of a late appointment, you'll still be able to catch up and review the webinar. Or if you wish, you can share it with your colleagues in your organisation so that there is a ongoing team training being experienced. So I look forward to joining you in these workshop webinars. The first one to be presented from the 13th of March, and we will be presenting 6 in total during 2018, so they'll be spaced about 7 to 8 weeks apart throughout the year. We will avoid school holidays and public holidays, and we look forward to your participation. If you have any questions on any matter affecting the workshops, webinars, please send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au. Don't forget, we have special membership fees available if there are more than one person in your company or organisation who wishes to participate in the Corporate Governance Network, and the details of the membership offer is disclosed on our website. Thank you very much for your interest in the ESS Corporate Governance Network. We look forward to you joining us. Have a great day. Goodbye.